Well, hey, how's it going out there today? I'd like to welcome you to part 5 of this series where we take you from the purchase through tonight's episode where we're going to cover screen settings and I'm going to go over a little bit of networking to start out with. So we've got a lot to cover, so let's go ahead and get to it. All right, so we're just going to do a quick run through on the Garmin Marine networking. The first thing, when you have the two units plugged into the same Ethernet cord, you'll notice I pulled the active captain card out of this unit. You only want to have one active captain card in at a time. Otherwise it causes a conflict between the two units. The other thing is, when we first start out, let's check and make sure we got our sonar disabled. Press the power button quickly, and we're disabled because we have an option to enable all sonar, so we're good there. Go back home, we'll check this one and enable all sonar, so we're disabled right at the moment. All right, go ahead and go home. We'll go to settings and communications and preferred sources. And do the same here, settings, communications, preferred sources. Now, as you can see here, these screens aren't the same on both of them. So because on this unit, I've got it on my bow and I'm reading off the transducer that's attached to my trolling motor, I don't want to look at the clear view and the side view because that trolling motor is not going to be very steady. It's going to be turning back and forth all the time and it's not necessarily level. So when I want to look at my clear view or my side view on this unit, I'm going to read off of the transom mounted transducer, which is connected to this 106 SV unit. So on the 106 SV, you can see I'm going to read everything on this is all in the built-in. When it says built-in, that means the transducer that's plugged into the back of the unit. Now I am going to read my traditional off the built-in here. So basically, the preferred sources is where you can mix and match your transducers off of each unit when they're plugged in. Now, if you don't have them networked together with the Ethernet cord, you can't do this. They won't do it over Wi-Fi. So let's go ahead and unplug that Ethernet cord and I'll show you, because if you're setting them up one unit at a time, you cannot get to this screen. So let me show you. All right, so as soon as I unplugged it, I got sonar service lost. And if we go back home, go to our settings, go to communications, you can see there's not even a preferred sources on here anymore because the two units are not networked together anymore. Okay, so you may be asking, well, do I lose my sonar? No, you don't. So if you go here, you go sonar, let's go to clear view, because the clear view, when they're networked together, should be reading off the transom mounted transducer, and we don't have a network. So let's go ahead and enable our sonar just for a minute. And it's kind of hard to see, but you can see up here in the corner, it is scrolling. So what it'll do is it will just revert right back to the built-in transducer that's plugged into the back of the unit when you've lost your network. So don't worry about that. The only thing you might want to do is you might want to have your original active captain card that you made for that unit on board so you can plug it in if something happens to one of the units or you lose your network. So that's just a quick overview of the networking, and there's a detailed video here that I'll put a tag up in the corner so you can click on that video if you want to get a more detailed look at it. First, let's go ahead and disable that sonar again. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and get things ready to where we're just looking at one screen. So if you're wondering, you don't need to take notes. Most of these settings I've got that I've shown you tonight, I've got highlighted in a spreadsheet, and I'll go ahead and send that to you if you'd like. I just need you to send me an email to doubletfishing@outlook.com, and I'll attach the files and get them back to you. And I also have this journal on Amazon, and there's a link down in the description, and it's basically just a spreadsheet without my highlighted settings that I recommend. And also on Amazon, I've got some fishing journals, and those are pretty nice if you want to go ahead and check those out. Again, links down in the description. Okay, so I'm going to do something that I don't want you to do at home. So we're going to go to Settings, and System, and Simulator. And we're going to go ahead and turn it on and go back into it, set up, and we're going to set the speed at about 7 miles an hour. Whoops, not 70, done. And the reason is because the simulator makes some assumptions about what's connected to your device. And sometimes you'll put settings in that aren't actually available to you. So let's go to Sonar, Side View, and you can see our simulator's running. So you can see as I change it, you'll be able to see what changes I make. So we'll go home and we can go contrast. And the contrast, as you can see, that's going to make it darker. Or you can move it up and blow it completely out. Now, I like to leave mine somewhere around 80–85% to start. Now, what I'll do is I'll get out on the water the first time I'm using it, and I'll go ahead and adjust it to where it looks good for those certain water conditions, because the water conditions can make a difference. And we'll press done. Go back into our menu. Now the brightness, this is something that you'll be possibly changing as you go all day long. So I'll go to the brightness, and you can see you're going to have that cranked up pretty high. Generally, it's going to be 90% or better. And I don't really recommend using the autos, and it'll revert back to the autos sometimes, but I'm going to show you how to fix that as well. Not actually fix it, but make it to where you can change it easier. Now the zoom. The zoom functions, and Garmin has fixed that, but for a while they used to have it in auto all the time, to where auto was the default. Make sure the auto is turned off, and the manual, I'd go ahead and turn that off and just leave the magnify on. And what that does is the magnify, you can take your fingers and open it up, and it gives you a zoom box that you can move around. Now, one common mistake, and I've helped a few people out of this, is they'll turn that auto on in side view, and it makes a huge difference. It makes it look like you're not even on the same planet. It just distorts everything if you don't know how to use that zoom. So on the zoom functions, on all three, go ahead and just leave your magnify turned on. And if that box is bothering you, just pinch it and it'll go away. Now you can go ahead and adjust your range with the plus and minus buttons. You go plus, it zooms it in. You can see there we got 40 foot on both sides. Zoom it out, and you got 60. I would recommend starting out at about 60 to 70 feet and make sure that you can see the bottom and you've got a good image before you move out any farther than that. And then move out, and if your image starts getting bad, if the quality on the side starts getting real bad, that means you're trying to go too far. And you can also adjust your range here. You can go up or down, if you want to go increments of just a few feet. And you can also put it in auto, so it'll adjust as you're going, but again, I don't recommend doing that, but you certainly can. Right, sonar setup is where a lot of things are going to be. Your scroll speed, I recommend you leaving that in auto. Now your on-screen control, I like to set that to brightness. You got an option of brightness or range. Now you can already change your range with your plus and minus buttons, so I go ahead and set it to brightness. And you'll see what that looks like here in just a minute. And this is where you can change the color scheme. And you can get some really nice colors here. I really like this moss, and that's what I do leave it on most of the time. For the videos, I've been putting it over on the amber because that's what everybody's used to seeing, but I really like that. Done. And you can see down here, now you can adjust your brightness with these buttons. And it's kind of hard to see, but it tells you down at the bottom there. I'm at 100% right there. And here you've got your view selection, and we've got it set to left and right. But if you only wanted to look at one side at a time, if you wanted to get, if you were running along the bank and you wanted to just see one side, you could turn it to left only or turn it to right only. Adjust your overlay data here. And I've got my time of day on, my water temps in auto, speed in auto, and I'm showing the depth and the device voltage. And interference and TVG I leave on low. Bottom search limit, I just leave that in auto. And that's a quick overview of the side view menu. I go in depth in a lot of these in the Garmin Sonar Series playlist on the channel if you want to look at some other videos. All right, let's go ahead and look at clear view. All right, clear view is much the same. The contrast is going to start out at 80 or above. You can see the brightness, it went back down to the auto medium. You can go ahead and change that. Whoops. And again, the zoom, we have it on magnify only. And you can see the green bar there, and the others are turned black. That means that they're turned off. And that bottom lock is a pretty cool function, and I did a video on that as well. And we'll go ahead and go into sonar setup, on-screen control, brightness, same reason. The plus and minus buttons here will adjust your range depth. So if you want to adjust the depth you're looking at, you can do it with the plus and minus buttons. And by changing that up here, again, you've got your brightness that you can change on the screen. Sonar setup, advanced. The one change I do have from the factory setting is the TVG. I go ahead and leave that in low on this as well. All right, so let's go ahead and go to traditional now. And traditional, to start out with, you got your gain and your frequency. Now, because I'm in the simulator mode, it's a little different. But you can go ahead and leave that frequency in default. Your frequency and your beam width work together, and I go into that in detail again in a different video. But you can just go ahead and leave those in default, leave your range in auto. Zoom, you want to go ahead again, set that in magnify. So go ahead and make sure that everything's off but the magnify, and again, that gives you your zoom box if you want it. It just pops up and you can pinch it right back off. Really handy. And let's go ahead and go into sonar setup, your on-screen control. Again, because you can adjust your range or your bottom depth here, I go ahead and set my on-screen control to gain. And your gain in traditional is kind of like your contrast. And this is one where sometimes the autos actually don't work too bad. As you can see, I went ahead and turned it way up, and I've got everything blown out and it's real hard to see. But you can go ahead and go back to auto on any of these just by touching the middle. And again, on the advanced, I go with the interference on low. I show the surface noise, color gain default. The TVG, I go ahead and turn that down to low. And bottom search limit, I just leave that in auto. Then the traditional, they got it set up pretty good already. You only have just a few changes on that, and you can get out on the water with your traditional pretty quickly. Very few changes you really need to make to it just to get started. Like I say, as you become more advanced, you're going to want to go ahead and play with those frequencies a lot more. So I want to go ahead and take a look at one other thing, but I got to take it off the simulator. Let's go home, settings, system, simulator, off. And then let's go ahead and go back and go to side view, menu. Okay, now if you notice when we were in the simulator mode, and that's what I'm talking about, is when you're in simulator, some things will be there that shouldn't be there and some things that should be there aren't there. Now, I've got a GT54 transducer plugged in, so right now it's on chirp 455. And if I want to change that, I can go up to 1120 kilohertz. Now my preference is to start at 455 and find the edges and go with that. And then if I want to, I can turn it up. You don't really have to do that, but what you'll find if you have a GT54 is it just doesn't have the range that the GT56 does. The 54, basically you're going to try to keep it around 60 foot. Is 60 to 70 foot's about as far out as you can go in, say, 30 foot of water. So you're kind of limited at 1120 on this. And to be honest with you, especially with the 93 SV, the 455 kilohertz really is a pretty good picture. Now, these frequencies are all dependent on the transducer that you have connected to it. So if I had a GT56, let's go ahead and go back and go to sonar and clear view. If I had a GT56, I would have a frequency bar up here and I could change frequencies. But with the GT54, I don't have that option. So that's why you don't see any frequency here. Like you do here. When you first get out on the water, hit your menu button and adjust your contrast to the water conditions for that day. Then of course you can adjust your brightness up here because you've got that set up. And those are the two mainly that you're going to use to dial things in. And if you want to, go to sonar setup, go ahead and change that color scheme. And Caribbean's pretty cool. I like Caribbean also. Now I'll give you a little bonus tip here. If you want to mark something, okay, you can put your finger on there and swipe and it will pause the screen. So when you pause it, you've got these crosshairs. And you can just touch on something if you wanted to mark that brush pile right there. And see this inverted teardrop up here? That's what you press to mark it. Do not press the mark button down here. Anytime you press that mark button, that's going to mark the position of your boat. Okay? So if I hit that inverted teardrop, look up here, waypoint created at cursor. That's important. If it says cursor, that means it's an object that you want to mark in the water. Now, if I mark this, if I hit the mark down here on the menu, see this waypoint created at boat. So you may be 30, 40 maybe 100 yards from where you actually want to mark that, because you got your screen paused. And if you hit that mark, you're going to be way off. And believe it or not, that throws a lot of people off. So don't forget about this inverted teardrop up here. And from there, you can name it, give it a symbol, do whatever you want to with it. And you can navigate to it. So that's what I end up doing a lot of times, is I'll mark something. I'll go down through an area and I'll mark, 6, 8 different items, and then I'll come back to them, and I won't really spend a lot of time naming them or anything unless I find out that they're productive and I catch some fish, or it's just a really good spot. And to restart, you can either go ahead and just hit that button in the corner. You can also use this to pause, or you can just swipe it. Or you can also just hit back, and it'll take you back to the scrolling actual live screen. So as you can see, it's not real hard to dial your unit in. And I'll bet you with a little bit of practice, you'll have that imaging looking real good. Probably not as good as the simulator, but it'll be looking good. So until next time, keep calm and hook 'em, and go ahead and watch this video next for even more information.